ho, ho.
Hello, I'm Philip Duncan from weatherwatch.co.nz, and we're tracking a tropical depression that has formed in the Solomon Sea, and it's likely to become a tropical cyclone in the Coral Sea in the coming days. So let's get into it. Here is where that tropical depression has formed. Thunderstorms up here, perfect recipe to start getting some air moving around a bit, and that is now formed into a low pressure zone, which is technically named 93P. It will be given a cyclone name once it forms into a storm, and that's when you get gale force winds sustained around the center. So we're still a few days off before that happens. Elsewhere on this map, you're mostly seeing high pressure in the yellow and white colouring all across southern Australia and out over New Zealand. Very mild airflows. Overnight lows around Auckland in the low 20s coming up, and in fact even warmer weather for the nights are on the way. So let's take a look at 93P. Here it is in the Solomon Sea area, not far from the Solomon Islands, and it's not a storm at the moment, it's just low pressure with thunderstorms around it. In fact, the thunderstorms are the reason why it's spinning into a low now. So it's going to track in the days ahead into the Coral Sea area, and that's when it deepens, when it gets away from those large land masses. So here we are for Friday. Low pressure up here. See what I mean? It's not even a storm at 1,005 hectopascals. Further to the south, we've got a bigger low actually, down around Sydney. That's about to drive in another burst of rain and wind further to the south, with even the potential for some gale force winds in the coastal areas. But in New Zealand, not much to talk about. Might be an afternoon downpour. Otherwise, cloudy, humid, and sunny once you get inland. This weekend, that low in the Tasman gets a little bigger, and now it stretches out over to New Zealand. Rain returns to the South Island, and the North Island's just got a couple of showers, but this humid airflow from our friends up in Tonga continues to affect northern New Zealand. So basically, Tonga and northern New Zealand have got a very similar weather pattern at the moment as far as temperatures are concerned. So the low gets a little deeper on Saturday, but really it's Sunday. That's when it gets down to 990 and most likely gets a name by the Australian forecasters. It's in a weird part of the world because actually it only has to move a little bit further to the east, and then it's named by the Fiji forecasters, and only has to go a little bit further south, and then it's Met Service in New Zealand. So you've got this weird sort of zone, whereas, you know, all of North America has one forecasting body. We've got three for our small part of the world. But anyway, this is where it's likely to form. We've got this other low down here. They're kind of connected. By the way, a lot of questions about the red line and the blue line. That measures air thickness. So it's not always a lot of drama when you see it. What it means, though, is north of that red line, the air is very thick, a lot of humidity. In other words, it's the tropics. And that blue line, that's much colder, drier air. So when they get close, like you can see here, that doesn't necessarily mean extreme weather. It just means very hot and humid up here and much colder to the south. But there's not necessarily a storm system in between the two. So I just thought I'd share that with you. Now let's get into next week because the storm gets closer. So now definitely a tropical cyclone. New Caledonia is most exposed as we get into Monday. That hot, humid weather coming down over Fiji, New Caledonia, Vanuatu, be very, very hot and tropical. New Zealand's also going to be fairly tropical as well, at least for our standards, and downpours and rain hanging around as well. Now it's around about Tuesday next week when New Caledonia looks as though they could be most exposed. We're not yet ready to lock it in for them. Probably be another day or two still, because until the storm has formed, it's very hard for us to say where it's going to go. So we like to wait for it to form, the storm to form, before we truly lock it in. But as you can see, there is a connection between the tropics and New Zealand around Tuesday next week. Plenty of downpours and warm winds and humidity. Those overnight lows around 22 degrees for northern New Zealand. Here's our final map for Wednesday next week. So this is in a precarious place for New Zealand. It is close enough to directly impact us. It's also in a position where it could slide further to the east or further to the west. The guiding force, this high out near Australia and this high out to our east. In fact, this high more likely to be the dominating feature because it's more powerful. So the further that high drifts away from us, the more likely that storm heads eastwards. If the high holds firm, then this storm has a better chance of coming straight into New Zealand or even into the Tasman Sea further. So still a lot of watch this space, the cone of uncertainty we call it, where the further you go out, the tracking gets further apart, and that's where it gets harder. So New Zealand's still in that tricky area. Even New Caledonia not locked in yet for a direct hit. It could still be out at sea or even get closer to Vanuatu. So one to watch. Our next update will be on Friday. We'll have updates in the weekend on our website, and certainly by Sunday, Monday, we'll be locking in a lot more details. So that's all from me for today. We'll see you again on Friday.